Through a late summer fog, Calypso makes its way through the Antarctic's ice-strewn seas. To proceed further south, Captain Cousteau must first take on fuel for his research ship and reconnaissance helicopter. Through stark mountains of ice, Calypso will rendezvous with one of the few supply ships to venture from South America into these forbidding waters. The supply ship sighted, Calypso slowly makes her way to the protected anchorage of Melchior Archipelago. The support ship from the Argentine Navy has crossed the Drake Passage from South America with a vital supply of oil and gasoline. Calypso's bosun, Paul Zuena, coordinates the fuel transfer with his Argentinian counterpart. The Argentinians wish Cousteau and his crew safe passage as Calypso continues on her journey south. Calypso has already traveled 9,000 miles since the launching of the Antarctic expedition 3 months before from her home port of Monaco in southern France. In their greatest adventure, Captain Cousteau and his team have sailed the Mediterranean Sea, down the North Atlantic Ocean, across the equator. They continued along the coast of South America to its southern tip at Tierra del Fuego. Then they crossed the tempestuous Drake Passage to the frozen offshore islands of the White Continent. Off King George Island and on the shores of volcanic Deception, diving explorations were made. And now Calypso travels toward the Antarctic Circle and beyond, down the frigid finger of the Antarctic Peninsula that points back to the known world. This is part 3 of Jacques Cousteau's expedition in the Antarctic, the third of 4 reports from the South Polar Seas, in which Calypso divers will attempt to uncover what lies beneath the ice fields of this frozen world. Years and 2 days after it was first crossed by British explorer Captain James Cook in 1773, Captain Cousteau, aboard Calypso, crosses the Antarctic Circle.
In the Antarctic, we have seen very few large whales, but packs of killer whales still thrive. The close-knit family includes several females, offspring from 2 seasons, and a single large male, the leader, identified by his huge dorsal fin. They feed on fish and squid. Occasionally, they enrich their menu with seals, but they certainly don't deserve the epithet killer more than any other animal.
While observing the whales, Calypso, heading south, comes upon an awesome sight. The ship approaches an old sculptured iceberg that Cousteau will name the Sphinx, after the monumental Egyptian monster with its human head and body of a reclining lion.
The white Sphinx of the sea is a tabular berg spawned by an ice shelf several years ago. It is stranded and could break or capsize in heavy seas. It was etched by Antarctic gales, mountainous swells, and summer sun. Proportions of the Sphinx are epic, 240 feet high and 1,400 feet under the sea.
An inspection party is launched. The exceptionally fine weather allows Cousteau to bring Calypso close to the weathered iceberg, trusting that the swells will neither disintegrate the Sphinx nor turn it over. The U.S. Navy's sailing directions for Antarctica advises weathered icebergs be given wide berth. But Chief Diver Christian Bonacy cannot resist climbing the icy Sphinx. Now for the others too. Danger is forgotten as the adventurers succumb to the excitement of a grandeur rarely experienced before.
Like its Egyptian counterpart, the ice sphinx we look upon is a product of a desert, for ice-bound Antarctica is a desert. Here only 1 or 2 feet of snow fall each year. Unmelted, the ice crystals remain and pile up year after year, compacted in glaciers. "45,000 years before the construction of the colossal Sphinx at Giza, the snow that created this ice mass fell.
The men will now ride the swells, which will help them return through an ice crevice. Now they will dive to the extended underwater foot of the Sphinx, which has been detected by Calypso's sonar.
At a depth of 100 feet, the iceberg extends in a vast flat shelf, which is symmetrically pebbled, suggesting a giant golf ball. The salt in the seawater has probably eaten away at the freshwater ice to create this phenomenon of underwater art. Our attention is diverted to a lone inhabitant of this pebbled mansion. It is a small larval fish that, while transforming into a juvenile, dropped out from its school. Such weaklings often seek shelter from seals in small crevices along the icebergs. The tiny fish's body is still partially transparent, matching the ice cape. Its eye is brilliantly reflective, a lonely beacon in this frigid wilderness. It is a wandering will-o'-the-wisp.
Via satellites, Cousteau is in daily contact with NASA. As Calypso moves further south, Cousteau receives the latest ice conditions from John Arvison of Ames Research Center, California.
Yes, we are ready to receive these messages, and actually it does influence our...
Cousteau reports he is passing through a corridor of fringe ice in good weather. But NASA warns that the Bellinghausen Sea to the south has approximately 120 more nautical miles of ice than last year. It is breaking up and moving in the path of Calypso. The pack ice moving toward Calypso becomes increasingly consolidated.
We stopped Calypso to take advantage of the exceptionally good weather for a balloon ascent. As a high-altitude conning tower, a balloon is no match for a helicopter, but it is far less expensive and almost noiseless. Philip's mission is to evaluate its practical use in the Antarctic.
Calypso must first be secured to the largest ice floe. Then, to provide a wider base for the work party and a sufficient liftoff pad for the balloon ascent, with the help of a launch, 2 ice floes are tied together. For sailors from the sunny Mediterranean, this Antarctic dock is an unusual mooring. With the balloon transferred to the launching pad, preparations for the ascent will begin.
An Adelie penguin, raucous rider of the ice floe, is curious and demands attention.
Jacques, y a Yvan là?
Philippe signals the lighting of the propane burner. To inflate the Calypso balloon, hot air is forced into it by a large ventilator. From the poet Homer, we took the name of his nymph, Calypso. Our beautiful Calypso maidens now become pneumatic to soar with Philippe over Antarctic seas.
Philippe and Louis Preslin are ready to ascend in the first hot air balloon flight over the Antarctic.
Through icy silence, Philippe, Preslin, and inflated sea nymphs glide over a Cape of Serenity with visibility up to 250 miles. Balloon flights have always been hazardous. Here, the risk is compounded by flying over 29-degree water in which, if ditched, a man could not survive long. But in the event of mishap, our helicopter will come to the man's rescue. We had hoped that balloon surveys might enable specialists to count and photograph wild creatures without disturbing them. However, as we drift over animals, we find that they do look toward the sky with some concern.
The free-flying balloon trails a tether that will be picked up by a towing launch when Philippe is ready to return. Here in the Antarctic, because of the remarkable absence of particles in the air, Philippe Cousteau can see the chaotic drifting ice pack stretching 200 miles. It would be impossible for Calypso to sail across this formidable barrier. However, there is a narrow coastal channel blocked with pack ice and towering walls of icebergs that Calypso might be able to pass through, in the hope yet to dive beneath solid fields of ice. For the Voyager, Antarctic midnights produce oddities of light. The tilt of the Earth in January and low sun rays slanting through layers of polar air create strange glows and mirages that mesmerize men on watch. But the ice in the path of Calypso is no mirage, and launches are sent ahead to push the larger chunks of ice away from vulnerable Calypso. It is a hazardous penetration. As far beyond the Antarctic Circle, Calypso bores on through hummocked ice, now become too large for the launches to easily handle. An open water lead is welcomed, and in the escort launch, Paul Zuena, at least momentarily, finds some respite. Calypso's thick steel observation chamber lends protection here, but the propellers and rudders are exposed and vulnerable. Now again, the pack closes in.
The broken ice is moving slowly north through the channel. We must fight our way through this narrow, unfathomed passage, entrenched between steep mountains and sheer ice cliffs that may collapse at any time and completely engulf us. To no avail, we attempt to work the consolidated pack. For the first time, I begin to doubt. Could we become beset, so surrounded by ice that Calypso would lose control and movement?
In 1915, Ernest Shackleton's ship Endurance was beset. Reportedly the strongest wooden ship ever built, the Endurance was cracked like a walnut by pressure ice.
Now, all around Calypso, there is ominous ice and grinding peril. We are trapped.
In the reconnaissance helicopter, pilot Bob McKeegan and Philippe Cousteau will look for a way out of the ice trap. Amidst the encircling pancake ice rises a colossal new iceberg, recently broken off a continental ice shelf. This obstruction is in the path of Calypso. But beyond the iceberg's tabular top, there is a ribbon of blue open water with a flotilla of current-driven icebergs. Bob McKeegan and Philippe change course in search of a safe passage for Calypso to the open water. The men are in radio contact with Captain Cousteau.
Ce que je voudrais savoir, c'est si une fois qu'on a contourné vers l'ouest, on trouve l'eau libre vers le sud.
Philippe has found a navigable channel and informed Cousteau of its location. Calypso and the helicopter will rendezvous near an aged iceberg, now grounded in the Narrows. Calypso has maneuvered through the ice blockade and sailed this channel clear of ice blocks, and now unimpeded continues its journey.
Aboard Calypso, we all breathe more freely. We have avoided major damage. We have escaped the ice blockade with only minor scratches along our hull. Between the sheer continental ice cliffs on both sides, we find ourselves in whiskey ice, through which we can travel easily. It is a magical morning when we approach an Antarctic panorama of pristine beauty. The men will call the crown jewel of this sparkling coastline Mystic Mountain.
Now Calypso approaches her destination, the solid ice fields that extend from the glacier ice shelves. Here the men of Calypso will explore what lies beneath this frozen world. Calypso has worked her way south to an almost inaccessible bay, heavily populated by seals. The men have finally reached a field of fixed ice, 20 miles long, from which to launch a diving expedition. Calypso will now be moored to a dock of solid ice connected to the shore. If the good weather turns foul, a freezing sea could imprison Calypso. The temperature of the Antarctic has dropped below 28.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Lest the ship be frozen in, the ice forming around Calypso is churned loose by a launch. On improvised sleds, Cousteau and crew man-haul their equipment over the ice, as did British explorer Robert Scott during his ill-fated race to the South Pole. Cousteau, in search of seal holes, observes the ice pack is cracking. They may not come back walking. They may need boats.
A breathing hole. Through ice 6 feet thick, the hole was gnawed round and smooth by Weddell seals. The holes are sometimes shared by crab-eater seals. We would slightly enlarge 2 seal holes so that we can dive through one, explore the seal's under ice domain, and in case of trouble, come up through the other.
Having enlarged the first hole, Philippe now assists Undersea on the second one.
We wonder if seals will use holes enlarged by man.
Évidemment, il y a vous.
Under the ice here, the sea is 2,000 feet deep. Weddell seals can reach that depth. We will attempt to photograph their descent.
Non, je pense que sur la chair, hein, c'est carrément. Non, non, sur la chair, parce que mon néoprène est sauté. Je vais mettre dessus.
In our acoustical cyclorama, we can hear the seals calling from miles around. Greenish microscopic algae coat the solid ceiling. Weddell seals spend a harsh winter beneath the ice, where it is warmer than above. From the unfathomed darkness come sounds from seals foraging hundreds of feet below. Weddell seals are incredible divers. They can stay almost an hour underwater and can swim up to 5 miles under the ice. They use their sonar to relocate their breeding holes after foraging in the depth. The seal holes are beginning to freeze. It is time to leave. Unlike Weddell seals, we cannot know our way out.
Now Cousteau launches a saucer dive. The survival of some Antarctic fishes in sub-freezing water has long been a puzzle. Most intriguing is the nearly legendary elusive ice fish, known to have no red blood cells. Cousteau will film the journey, while Albert Falco pilots the two-man craft with a new depth capability for the Antarctic of 1,200 feet. Outfitted with an additional camera, remotely operated, Cousteau and Falco descend through the freezing sea.
We dive down along the flank of an iceberg to see what kind of life survives under these extreme conditions. Our first encounter is a strange one.
Qu'est-ce que c'est cette espèce de boule de plastique au bout d'une tige? Ah ben c'est ces fameuses amphibies là.
Not much is known about this deep-water animal, a coelenterate. The ball at the bottom plays the role of a mouth, while its 6-foot-long, worm-like venomous extension curls up around its prey and slowly contracts to bring the victims to its mouth. The ball of feeding tentacles will then suck them in.
Ah ben voilà, une de ces méduses.
Like a tolling Christmas bell, a type of jellyfish sweeps back and forth, picking up microscopic food. we come upon a sluggish snailfish, a pink, cold-water, gelatinous creature, undulating as it feeds in the diatom ooze with its sucking disc. Looming out of the depth is one of the favorite foods of the deep-diving Weddell seals. They are squid, revealed by our saucer lights on the reflective and probably fluorescent pigment in their bodies. This is the first time living squid have been seen in the Antarctic. Another brilliant species of squid with gossamer wings is unknown to us. Finally, the icefish, found only in the Antarctic and never filmed before in its natural environment. When the temperature drops below -2 degrees centigrade, the icefish generates a kind of antifreeze in its blood, which contains no red cells or hemoglobin to carry oxygen. It is felt that the semi-transparent icefish may give man new clues to the creation of artificial blood. The crowded world we live below thrives at the very edge of life. In water 2 degrees colder, nothing would survive.
Quelle est la profondeur, la BVR?
Falco aims the propulsion jet nozzles upward to signal the saucer's location for its recovery by Calypso in the fast-freezing sea. The sky and sea appear uncertain, but if winter will hold off, the men of Calypso will now dive beneath the ice off the continent itself. In late January, chilling breezes, promises of an early winter, move between fragmented icebergs, broken off from glaciers and scattered by surging seas. Jacques Cousteau leads a diving party toward the coastal ice cliffs. Within the protection of the ice belt is the diver's destination, Mystic Mountain. The men will begin the dive from the flat seawater ice.
Crab-eater seals move with rapid swimming strokes across flat ice. They are the most lithe of Antarctic seals. Philippe quietly slips into the sea to photograph them. The crab-eaters should be called krill-eaters, for the Antarctic's small shrimp-like crustaceans are their principal diet. There are more crab-eaters than all other Antarctic seals combined. There are many more seals underwater than one can spot on the ice. Antarctic explorers of all have reported hearing from above the sound of seals calling to each other below. Now, in their most adventuresome dive, Philip and team slant down ever deeper along an endless wall of ice. The men hear the seals' distant voices, and in the layered caverns, the heaving and cracking of ice. Over the ages, this freshwater ice melts, refreezes, collapses, and buckles. Walls, floors, and ceilings endlessly shift as ice grottos are created and destroyed. The disintegrating crystal caves could, in a moment, shatter and become icy tombs. An opening leads to a maze of mirrors where minds become confused. The men continue deeper through the labyrinth to the alarming accompaniment of cracking ice and the endless, eerie songs of seals. The divers squeeze past pure water prisms that look like giant diamond swords.
The men emerge through a narrow ice cave and are at last outside the caverns. They regroup to leave the icy catacombs to the elusive seals. It's time for the divers to follow the bubbles from their air tanks to the haven of the surface. With change of weather rooster tails in the sky, Calypso moves slowly southward along the ice bluffs that fringe the mainland shore. As the ship moves ever further away from the low-arcing sun, the strange glow turns iceberg bastions to gold.
Here, the shades of ice evoke the sense of the desert. The Antarctic continent is a desert, bathed by a very fertile sea. In this land of paradoxes, we are lone voyagers, accompanied only by our own reflection cast by the passing summer sun.
ça. C'est rentré, sorti.
Against the immensity of this timeless scape, we are but passing shadows. For thousands of years before the sun shone on man, it illuminated mountains of glacier ice that may endure and outlive man. For us, the austral summer is running out of days. Before long, we must sail with the sun to escape the long south polar night. Soon, only monuments of ice and masterless winds will consort in the trackless splendor of wintry Antarctic seas.
Off the Antarctic continent, Calypso is buffeted by screaming winds that will rise to 100 miles per hour. Cousteau's ship is to be assaulted and grievously injured by armadas of driven ice. Ice-encrusted, visibility near zero, Calypso, dependent upon radar and NASA satellites, will fight for her life as she tries to escape the Antarctic winter in Part 4 of Cousteau's expedition in the Antarctic, Blizzard at Hope Bay.